The aroma of burnt coffee and cheap bacon was the closest thing I had to a permanent scent in my life. It clung to the thin fabric of my waitress uniform, a constant reminder of my reality. My reality was the Rusty Mug Diner in the middle of nowhere, Montana, a haven of forgettable simplicity. My name was Wren and I was nothing special. I kept my head down, my gaze fixed on the uneven floor tiles. It was just easier that way. I was a magnet for unwanted attention and not the good kind. I was often called plain or mousy, but the worst was the pity. It felt heavy and suffocating, like the heat rising off the ancient grill behind the counter. Today the heat was suffocating for a different reason. They had arrived 10 minutes ago. A sudden, jarring invasion of power and privilege that didn't belong in my dusty, forgotten town. They were two men, father and son, though the similarities stopped at their overpowering presence. The son, Rhys, sat at my counter, tall, impeccably dressed and radiating a casual, expensive cruelty. He was the one who had caused the sudden, sharp tension in the diner. "Another coffee, mouse," he drawled, pushing the empty mug across the sticky counter. I reached for the pot, my movements stiff. I hated his voice, the way he looked at me like I was something clinging to the bottom of his designer shoe. "And try not to spill it this time," he added, his voice loud enough for the two old truckers in the corner to hear. He wanted the audience. "Honestly, look at her, Dad. Clumsy. Couldn't find grace with both hands." I felt the familiar hot rush of shame, but I didn't let it touch my face. I just focused on pouring, praying my shaking hands wouldn't betray me. "Just an hour more, Wren. Then you can go home and hide." Rhys leaned forward, his arrogance a physical weight. "I just don't understand how people like her even get out of bed. What's the point? No polish, no presence, just..." He paused, letting his eyes sweep over my simple ponytail and my plain face, which everyone assumed was my actual ordinary face. He sneered. "Just utterly unremarkable." I focused on the silver pendant tucked beneath the collar of my uniform. It was an ugly, heavy thing, a gift from my late mother with strict instructions. Never take it off. I always thought it was just sentimental, but it always felt oddly cold against my skin, a tiny anchor in my lonely life. I was about to slide the mug back when a voice, deep and resonant enough to make the glassware rattle, cut through the tension. "Rhys." It was Cassian, the father. He wasn't sitting at the counter anymore. He had been quietly observing, and now he was standing, every inch of his towering frame radiating authority. The air grew immediately dense. If Rhys was a bully, Cassian was a force of nature, a king carved from granite. "We are not here to amuse ourselves," Cassian stated, his cold eyes fixed on his son, though I felt the periphery of his gaze brushing against me. "You will apologize to the staff immediately." Rhys looked genuinely shocked. "Apologize? Dad, she's..." He waved a dismissive hand at me. "She's just a waitress. She has no standing." "Everyone has standing," Cassian replied, his voice dangerously low. "Now." Rhys, sulking like a scolded child, turned to me. "Fine. Sorry, Wren." He spat my name like a curse. I nodded curtly, anxious to be rid of them. I started to retreat behind the counter, but as I turned, my elbow snagged the edge of the large metal cream dispenser. It clattered to the floor with a deafening bang. I froze, humiliated. "Clumsy. Unremarkable." Rhys was already chuckling. "See?" he muttered to his father. "A disaster." Cassian didn't look at his son. He looked at me. As I bent down quickly to retrieve the dispenser, the force of his intense gaze felt like a tangible heat. And then it happened. The silver pendant that had been cold against my skin for 20 years suddenly felt scorching hot. A blinding flash of silver light erupted from the pendant, followed by a sharp cracking sound that seemed to come from inside my own skull. I cried out, a small choked gasp of pain, and instinctively reached for my neck. The pendant had fractured into dozens of pieces, showering the floor like broken glass. The change was immediate and terrifying. The air in the diner, moments ago smelling of burnt fat, was instantly overwhelmed by an alien ancient scent. A wild, earthy mix of pine, ozone, and something rawly, fiercely royal. I felt a dizzying pressure in my head, a lifting of a perpetual fog. My vision sharpened, the blurry edges of the room snapping into painful focus. I looked up and I saw the truckers staring at me, their eyes wide with fear, no longer pity. My eyes. I knew instantly they weren't the boring brown I thought they were. They felt like they were burning gold. Cassian's eyes fixed on mine were no longer cold. They were wide with utter shock, two pools of molten silver. His entire body, moments ago rigidly controlled, was shaking. He didn't look at a waitress. He looked at a threat. He looked at a destiny. Rhys stumbled back, bumping into a table. What is that smell? That's not possible, he whispered, a thread of genuine terror replacing his arrogance. Cassian took two enormous strides forward, closing the distance. He ignored his son. He ignored the gasping silence of the room. He reached out and with a powerful possessive hand he grabbed my arm. The glamour, he choked out, his voice raw with disbelief. It's gone. That scent, the lineage. His gaze locked onto a faint silver mark that had just appeared high on my cheekbone. The mark of an ancient, hidden Lycan royal line. And then his focus hardened. He pulled me roughly against his powerful chest, pinning me to him like a shield. Mine, he growled, the word not a loving claim but a desperate, furious declaration of ownership. You are mine. He hadn't chosen a Luna. He had claimed a complication that threatened to destroy his kingdom and ignite a Fae war. If you felt the shock and tension as Wren's secret was unveiled by the Lycan King, comment where you are watching from and how the weather there is today. Like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss our next interesting stories. The moment King Cassian growled the single desperate word, mine, the world outside the Lycan King and me ceased to exist. His arms, thick and corded with muscle, felt like iron restraints. He wasn't holding me tenderly. He was seizing a precious, volatile object that had suddenly fallen into his lap. My face was pressed against the expensive, faintly metallic scent of his jacket, and the heavy, rapid thumping of his heart wasn't a romantic beat. It was the frantic rhythm of a man facing disaster. The silence in the diner was so deep it felt like a vacuum, broken only by the hitching breath of the old cook behind the counter. I couldn't breathe. Not because of the king's tight grip, but because the fog in my head, the glamour charm suppression, was gone. Every sense had been dialed up to a painful, terrifying 10. I could hear the cook's saliva gathering, the minute scrape of a floorboard, the frantic pulse in Cassian's own throat. Most terrifyingly, I could smell my own scent. Potent, metallic, and undeniably royal. A scent that had no business being in a place that smelled of stale coffee. Let go of her, father. The shout was Rhys's, sharp and laced with betrayal. Cassian's grip didn't lessen. He shifted, pulling me slightly behind him, effectively using my small body as a shield or perhaps a barricade. He finally looked at his son, and the cold fury in his silver eyes was more terrifying than the moment he claimed me. Silence, Prince, Cassian snarled, his voice a low, warning rumble that promised pain. You do not question a claim, and you certainly do not question me. Rhys was white-faced, his eyes darting between my suddenly golden ones and the fragmented silver pieces scattered on the floor. He hadn't just mocked a clumsy waitress. He had insulted a potential Luna and by extension his own father. But she's nothing. I saw her glamour break. She was in a diner. She's not Octavia. She's not our alliance. Rhys pleaded, the word Octavia, carrying the weight of a decree, the symbol of the kingdom's security. Hearing the name of the woman Cassian was supposed to marry, the woman who was meant to prevent the loss of the kingdom to the Fae, was like a bucket of ice water. It forced a moment of clarity through my terror. I wasn't claimed for love. I was claimed because my scent, my lineage, had just been unveiled, and now I was a massive political liability that the Lycan King couldn't afford to ignore. Cassian's jaw tightened, the muscle pulsing visibly. He was fighting a war inside himself. The duty to his people versus the overwhelming instinctual pull of a true mate. Get the guards, Cassian commanded Rhys, his voice regaining its kingly authority. And keep your mouth shut about what you saw. This is contained. Now. Rhys, chastised and afraid of his father's rage, stumbled toward the door. As he passed, he shot me a look of pure, concentrated hatred. A promise of retribution I knew he would keep. Cassian spun back to me, his massive hands cupping my face, forcing me to meet his intense gaze. Up close, I could see the lines of stress around his eyes, the deep-set exhaustion of a man who hadn't slept properly in years. Who hid you? He demanded, his voice low and urgent, devoid of any warmth. Who gave you that charm? The lineage is extinct. You shouldn't exist. I could only shake my head, unable to form words. My mind was reeling, flooded with 2 decades of suppressed memory trying to break through the veil of the glamour. All I could recall was my mother's terrified voice just before she died. "Never take it off, Wren. They will find you." The prophecy. "I don't know," I managed to choke out, the sound rusty and weak. He didn't believe me. The skepticism was etched deep in his eyes. He squeezed my face gently but firmly. "Listen to me, hidden princess. You are a lightning rod. You are standing in the middle of a political inferno, and if I don't move you, the council will execute you before the night is through. They view your lineage as a threat to the current regime, and now that your glamour is broken, they will track your scent." He grabbed my arm and pulled me toward the back exit. "I have to take you with me. You're my claim. Whether you are a blessing or a curse to my kingdom, you are now my responsibility." I stumbled as he dragged me through the greasy kitchen. A curse. That's all I was. The glamour had kept me safe, hidden as a poor girl. Now its destruction had made me a target and a political weapon. The moment we stepped outside, a low-flying military-grade helicopter roared into view, its searchlights slicing through the late afternoon sky. It landed with a deafening thump just 50 yards away. The king's personal transport. 2 massive, heavily armored Lycan guards immediately rushed toward us. They smelled like steel and ozone, and their eyes, once they saw me, widened with respect and disbelief. They saw what Rhys couldn't stomach: the truth of my Lycan royal features. Cassian shoved me roughly into the back of the helicopter, following me in and sealing the door shut with a solid thud. He didn't sit across from me. He sat beside me, his thigh pressed against mine, his massive body acting as a physical shield against the world outside. The helicopter lifted off, banking sharply. I pressed my face against the window, watching the familiar dusty lights of my simple Montana life disappear below the vast darkness. Tears finally came, silent and hot, for the life I had just lost. Cassian didn't offer comfort. He pulled out a high-tech satellite phone and began speaking in a low, furious growl, switching seamlessly from English to a hard, guttural language I didn't recognize. I caught only one English phrase repeated with cold intensity: "The Fae bargain is now void. Prepare Octavia for immediate containment. The claim is absolute." The claim was absolute. And that meant the price had just been paid. The kingdom's security, Octavia's pride, and my simple life, all were shattered. An hour later we landed not in a traditional pack house, but on the roof of a soaring skyscraper in a bustling city. New York, I realized based on the lights below. This wasn't a pack, it was a dynasty, a corporate empire masking a hidden royal court. Cassian kept his hand on the small of my back, a constant, heavy pressure as he led me through a series of silent, mirrored hallways. His grip was a clear message to the guards who passed: "Do not touch. Do not question. She is under my protection." We finally reached an ornate set of double doors, guarded by 2 more imposing Lycans. Cassian paused, turning to me, his expression unreadable. "We are in the royal apartments," he said, his voice flat. "You will stay here. You will not leave. You will not speak to anyone but me. Your safety depends on your obedience, Wren." He used my name like a warning. I looked up at the Lycan King, this cold, powerful stranger who had just ripped my life from the roots. What happens now?" I whispered. A flicker of something, pain? Regret? Crossed his eyes. He reached out and gently brushed a strand of hair from my face, his touch surprisingly tender, before resting his massive hand on my jaw. "Now," he said, his eyes darkening, "we wait for the fallout. And we figure out why destiny chose to destroy my kingdom by handing me the one thing I was bound to protect." He pushed the doors open. I stepped through the threshold into a room that was larger than my entire diner, decorated with heavy velvet and ancient, expensive tapestries. Standing in the center of the vast chamber, beautiful, statuesque, and radiating lethal fury, was Octavia. She wasn't dressed in a ceremonial gown, but in a silk suit that screamed wealth and political power. Her eyes were twin daggers of emerald venom, fixed entirely on me. "The Lycan King," Octavia said, her voice dripping with ice, "has brought a common tramp into the royal sanctuary and called her his mate, thereby condemning us all to the Fae Curse." "Cassian, have you lost your mind?" Cassian stepped forward, his body shielding me once more. "She's my claim, Octavia. And she is here because her lineage is a threat that needed immediate containment." "Containment?" Octavia laughed, a harsh, grating sound. She strode toward me, stopping only inches away. She didn't look at the king, she addressed only me, the perceived threat. "Let me tell you something, little diner mouse," Octavia hissed, her beautiful face twisted in a mask of contempt. "You have broken a Fae bargain. That means within the next 3 weeks, a devastating plague will sweep through the kingdom, and every Lycan in this country will fall sick. Your existence is a death sentence. And if Cassian doesn't fix this, I will be the one to sign your execution order." She wasn't just a political rival. She was a lethal threat, promising execution/banishment as the consequence of my mere existence. Cassian caught Octavia's arm, his grip hard. "That is enough. Leave." Octavia yanked her arm free, her eyes never leaving mine, delivering one final blow. "Enjoy your stay, Wren. You are not a Luna. You are a sacrifice." She turned and swept out of the room, leaving a trail of expensive perfume and the suffocating terror of her prophecy. I stood there, trembling, the gilded room suddenly feeling like a beautifully constructed cage. I wasn't just fighting for my life. I was fighting for the lives of every Lycan in a kingdom I didn't even know existed. Cassian came up behind me, placing his hands on my shoulders. I flinched, not out of fear but from the overwhelming power of his touch. "She is trying to frighten you," he murmured, his breath warm on the back of my neck. "She is ruthless, but she won't touch you while you are under my roof. You are safe here." But I wasn't safe. The weight of his touch, the promise of the Fae Curse, and the icy rage of his cousin were all pressing down on me. I turned to face him, forcing my golden eyes to meet his silver ones. "You took me from my life, your majesty," I said, my voice stronger now, fueled by adrenaline and fear. "You claimed me. You dragged me into this war. Tell me one thing, why? Why risk your entire kingdom for a stranger whose name you didn't even know an hour ago?" He looked at me for a long, agonizing moment, and for the first time the cold mask slipped. His expression was raw, almost pained. "Because the moment your glamour shattered, the Fae bargain did too," he whispered, stepping closer until the air between us sparked. "I am bound by duty, but when I saw you, I felt a primal connection that overrides every law, every curse, and every kingly responsibility. You are the flaw in my perfect system. And I can't let you go." King Cassian's admission, that my sudden presence was a primal connection overriding his duty, did nothing to reassure me. If anything, it doubled my fear. He hadn't claimed me out of love or respect, but out of a desperate, instinctual need that he himself viewed as a catastrophic flaw. He released my shoulders and stepped back, instantly donning his cold, kingly armor once more. The momentary vulnerability was gone, replaced by the calculating pragmatism of a monarch facing a coup. "This suite is your prison until I decide how to proceed," he stated, walking toward a massive wooden desk laden with ancient maps and communication devices. "We must assess the damage the breaking of the glamour charm has done to the Fae bargain. Until then, you are under my protection, which is absolute. No one, not even Octavia, will touch you." Protection. A pretty word for being held captive against my will. "What about Rhys?" I asked, my voice still trembling but gaining a defiant edge. "Your son. He sees me as a common tramp. How can I be safe from him?" Cassian didn't look up from a device he was activating. "Rhys is spoiled, not stupid. He knows the consequence of challenging a king's mate, even a claimed one. He will be confined to his quarters until I see fit to release him. He is the crown prince, but I am the king. Your safety is my priority, not his comfort." His words were firm, but they offered little comfort. I knew the look in Rhys's eyes, the deep-seated arrogance that came from years of entitlement. A father's order might slow him down, but it wouldn't stop the malice. I walked over to the floor-to-ceiling windows, looking down at the glittering, indifferent lights of the city. I was a hidden princess, ripped from my solitude and dropped into a glittering cage, completely alone. All because of the unveiling of my true scent and the subsequent shattering of a centuries-old political arrangement. "What is the Fae bargain?" I asked, turning to face him. "Octavia said I've condemned everyone to a plague. Is that true?" Cassian finally looked up. He sighed, the sound heavy and tired, running a hand through his dark hair. "Centuries ago, our Lycan ancestors made a pact with a powerful faction of the Fae court. We were at war, and the Fae offered peace and protection in exchange for a continuous royal line established through a specific bloodline, Octavia's family. The contract stipulated that if the ruling Lycan King ever found a true mate from an unapproved lineage before the formal political marriage took place, the bargain would be considered broken. The consequence is the Fae Curse, a magical sickness that targets our Lycan nature. He pushed away from the desk and began pacing, his sheer size making the vast room feel small. The Fae are meticulous. The moment my instincts recognized your true lineage and compelled me to claim you, the contract shattered. Octavia wasn't lying. The curse will begin to spread across the kingdom within the next 21 days. The weight of my own existence suddenly felt crushing. 21 days. I hadn't just lost my life. I was responsible for an entire kingdom's destruction. And the solution? I whispered, my throat tight. Cassian stopped pacing, his silver eyes cold and hard. The Fae always leave a loophole. The curse can be averted in one of two ways. 1. The king must reject the unapproved claim, you, and execute her before the next full moon. Then he proceeds with the arranged marriage to the approved bloodline, Octavia. 2. The unapproved claim, you, must prove your worthiness to the Lycan ancestors by successfully completing an ancient sacred trial. A trial of purity and power that hasn't been used in 500 years. My heart hammered against my ribs. Execution/banishment or a deadly trial. There was no middle ground. And what is this trial? It's designed for our most powerful royalty, Cassian explained, his voice flat. It tests raw power, strategic intellect, and the strength of the Lycan spirit. Most importantly, it requires the candidate to fully shift into their Lycan form. If you fail, the curse accelerates. If you succeed, the Fae accept the new mate as superior to the bargain, and the curse is nullified. I stared at him, dumbfounded. Fully shift. But I don't know how to shift. I didn't even know I was a Lycan until an hour ago. My mother hid me for a reason. I'm not trained. I'm just a waitress from Montana. His expression remained grim. Your glamour didn't just hide your features. It suppressed your abilities. The shift is an instinct. You have the royal blood. The power is within you. The problem is timing. We have less than 3 weeks to awaken it. He walked toward me, his enormous hands resting on my shoulders again, this time with a desperate urgency. We have no choice, Wren. You are a hidden princess. The prophecy your mother ran from is about to be fulfilled. We will train you and you will survive this trial, or my kingdom falls and your life will be forfeit anyway. You have the bloodline to win, and I will not let you be a sacrifice for a weak political bargain. I searched his eyes, looking for a glimmer of self-interest, but saw only the desperate resolve of a king. He truly believed he had no other option but to put me through a lethal trial. What about Octavia? I asked. She won't let this happen. She'll try to stop me before the trial even begins. She is powerful and has influence in the royal guard and the council, Cassian conceded. She knows that if you fail, I marry her. If you succeed, she loses everything. She is the rival and she will fight dirty. That is why your training begins now, and it will be brutal. You must be untouchable. He pulled me out of the suite and through a hidden door that led to a private lift. We descended rapidly to what felt like the sublevels of the skyscraper. The air grew cooler, sterile, smelling faintly of metal and ozone. The lift doors opened into a massive, pristine white chamber that looked like a cross between a gym and a high-security lab. Waiting there was a woman, mid-50s, with the stern, intelligent eyes of a seasoned military commander. She wore sleek black tactical gear. King Cassian, the woman said, bowing slightly but keeping her eyes focused on me. General Anya is here. I assume this is the new development. This is Wren, Cassian stated, his hand resting on my back. She is my claim, and the fate of the Lycan kingdom rests on her success. Anya, you have 20 days to prepare her for the trial of purity and power. Do whatever is necessary. Break her if you must, but rebuild her as a queen. Anya approached me, circling me slowly, her gaze dissecting every inch of my small frame. She didn't mock, she assessed. A waitress, your majesty? Anya said, raising a skeptical eyebrow at Cassian. She looks soft. The trial is unforgiving. It will require the king to unlock her Lycan core, a painful process she must endure before she can even attempt a partial shift. She must be pushed past the point of human endurance. Then push her, Cassian commanded. Do not stop until she is ready. I will join you after my council meeting. He gave me one last, intensely significant look, A look that said I am responsible for this and I will see you through it, and then he was gone, retreating back into his world of political maneuvering and crisis management. General Anya turned to me, her expression utterly serious. Right. Little princess. My name is Anya. I run the Royal Guard training program. Your royal blood may be a powerful heirloom, but your soft human life is a weakness. We have 20 days to change that. I need to know what I'm working with. Stand straight. Tell me what you remember about your mother, your life before the glamour broke, and anything that might be a clue to the power we need to unlock. I stood taller, forcing the trembling out of my legs. The humiliation from Rhys, the cold threat of Octavia, and the impossible weight of Cassian's claim all coalesced into a single point of raw focus. I wouldn't be a victim. I wouldn't be a sacrifice. I remember silence, I said, meeting Anya's eyes. I remember fear. And I remember my mother telling me I had a strong heart. If I am the only way to save your kingdom, then tell me what to do. I have nothing left to lose. General Anya smiled, a thin, sharp curve of her lips that was more unsettling than a sneer. Good. We start with conditioning. The first step is activating your Lycan core. And that, Princess Wren, is going to hurt. General Anya wasn't lying. The training wasn't just physical. It was a psychological dismantling. The sterile white training chamber became a chamber of relentless pain, designed to strip away the soft human life that had kept me safe for 2 decades. Focus, Wren. Your Lycan core is a furnace, but you've been living in a draft. Anya's voice was a whip crack echoing off the high ceiling. For the first 2 days she subjected me to grueling physical drills, pushing my body past exhaustion, teaching me rapid, brutal hand-to-hand combat, and forcing my senses to adjust to their new hyper-aware state. Every sound was too loud, every light too bright, and the scent of the general's powerful, disciplined Lycan nature was overwhelming. The real agony began when King Cassian returned from his diplomatic meeting with the Lycan Council, his face etched with deeper tension. The council is moving quickly, he informed Anya, his voice grave. Octavia is feeding them rumors of your weakness, Wren. They are demanding proof of your lineage's power before they sanction the trial. We must risk it. We have to force the Lycan core to ignite. Cassian stood before me, his massive frame radiating an almost terrifying power. This is necessary, Wren, he said, his silver eyes searching mine, demanding my consent. I need to wake the ancient power the glamour suppressed. It will hurt more than anything you've ever felt. But it is the first step toward the full shift needed to pass the trial. I nodded, my breath catching in my throat. I remembered Rhys's mocking face, Octavia's venom, and the crushing weight of the Fae Curse. I had no choice. Do it, I whispered. Cassian placed his enormous hands on my temples, his touch surprisingly careful, but the intent was pure, concentrated force. He wasn't just touching me, he was reaching into my very essence, searching for the hidden fuse of my royal Lycan identity. A raw, silver energy surged from his hands and slammed into my mind. It was immediate, blinding, and overwhelming. I screamed, a sound that was torn from my core, not just my throat. It felt like every nerve ending in my body had been set on fire, like my bones were melting and reforming into something harder, sharper. I fell to my knees, clutching my head, the world spinning into a kaleidoscope of colors and pain. Through the blinding agony, I heard Cassian's deep, steady voice, like an anchor in a raging storm. Feel the power, Wren. Don't fight it. Embrace the fire. It is your strength, your birthright. You are a hidden princess. He was trying to guide me, to coach me through the devastation. But the pain was too much. I felt a wave of nausea and a sudden primal urge to lash out, to bite, to destroy the source of the agony. I can't. I gasped, tears streaming down my face. It's tearing me apart. Cassian knelt before me, his eyes locked on mine, his voice dropping to a fierce, raw command. This is your core awakening. You think your life in that human diner was difficult? This is what true power costs. You are stronger than your shame, Wren. Let it go. And in that moment something shifted. The physical pain was still there, but a fierce, white-hot rage rose up to meet it. Not just anger at the pain, but fury at the years of being hidden, mocked, and dismissed. Fury at Rhys, fury at Octavia, and fury even at Cassian for dragging me into this desperate fight. I'm not a sacrifice. I will not be a victim. I will not let this kingdom fall. The thought was a silent, defiant roar in my mind. Suddenly the pain receded, replaced by a profound, invigorating warmth that settled deep in my chest. It felt like pure, unadulterated energy, a fountain of potential. I lifted my head, panting, and looked at Cassian. He was staring at me, his eyes wide with a look of stunned reverence. General Anya, standing a few feet away, had her hand clamped over her mouth. "The glow," Cassian whispered, his voice thick with awe. "It's magnificent." I didn't understand. I glanced down at my hands. They were trembling but radiating a faint, palpable silver light. The air around me felt electrically charged. I had done it. The core was awake. Cassian took a slow, deliberate breath, his gaze moving from my glowing hands to my gold eyes. "The pain is over for now. You are awake. But there is a drawback to that power. Your emotional state is now volatile. You will be prone to extremes." He helped me to my feet, his touch now gentle, almost reverent. "Anya, immediate shift training. We can't wait." The next stage was training my new raw power and attempting the partial shift. The chamber was secured, and Anya was meticulous, instructing me on how to harness the heat in my core to manipulate my physical form. After hours of failure, straining until my muscles screamed, resulting only in a slight elongation of my fingernails, Cassian dismissed Anya. He wanted to try something different. He approached me in the center of the room, his expression grave. "The shift is tied to the mate bond, Wren. It's often triggered by high emotion, fear, rage, or overwhelming desire. Since I claimed you, that primal chord is tied to me. I need to push the emotion." He took me by the shoulders, his thumbs tracing the line of my collarbone. "I am your king and I command you to shift. It is your only path to saving my kingdom." I fought the power within me, pushing at the walls of my own resistance. I focused on the urgency, the fear of the Fae Curse. Nothing. Cassian's eyes darkened with frustration. He suddenly grabbed my chin, forcing my gaze up to meet his. "You are wasting time, Wren. Don't you understand? If you fail the trial, I will have no choice. I will have to reject you and execute you to save my people. Now shift." The words reject and execute hit me like a physical blow. They weren't just threats. They were the cold truth of the price/high stakes. My fear spiked, but it wasn't enough. Then Cassian did the unexpected. He lowered his head and took my mouth in a kiss. A hard, demanding, utterly possessive kiss that wiped every thought from my mind except the sheer, overwhelming presence of him. It was the second time he had kissed me, but this was different. This wasn't a political claim. It was an electric current, a fusion of power and need. My own core power responded instantly, a blazing heat rushing through my veins to meet his. In that instant the world dissolved. The room vanished. All I felt was the furious power of the Lycan King pouring into me, commanding the change. My body contorted, the warmth turning into a sharp, thrilling pressure. My teeth elongated into sharp points. I felt muscle fiber thickening, my frame growing taller, stronger. But the most shocking change was the appearance of thick, silvery white fur erupting across my forearms, hands, and upper chest, followed by the appearance of razor-sharp claws. I pulled back from the kiss, gasping, looking down at the magnificent, wild change. My eyes were twin discs of molten gold. I had achieved a partial shift. Cassian's face was inches from mine, his breathing labored. He was stunned, his own powerful control nearly shattered by the force of the mate bond. "That's it, Wren," he breathed out, his voice husky and rough. "That raw power, that desire. You are magnificent." Before I could process the sudden intimacy and the terrifying new power, the door to the training room burst open. It was Rhys, followed by 2 royal guards he had clearly strong-armed into following him. His face was a mask of furious disgust. He stopped dead at the sight of me, the poor, clumsy waitress, standing next to his king, partially shifted, silver fur bristling, and radiating undeniable royal Lycan power. "What is this filth?" Rhys roared, pointing a shaking finger at my new, powerful form. "She's an animal. You are contaminating yourself, father. She's a lie." "Enough, Rhys." Cassian stepped in front of me, shielding me with his body, his own scent turning to warning. "She is my mate and she is the key to our survival. Leave now." Rhys ignored him, his eyes glued to my partially shifted form. He recognized the truth in the scent and the power. He advanced, pulling a gleaming ceremonial dagger from his belt. "No," Rhys hissed, his voice tight with hatred and fear. I will not let a common bitch break the Fae bargain and destroy the kingdom I am meant to inherit. Octavia was right. You are a sacrifice. He lunged toward me, aiming the dagger directly at my heart. Rhys's lunge was fast and desperate, fueled by a terrifying mix of entitlement and fear. He wasn't attacking me, he was attacking the threat I posed to his future, his lineage, and the stability of the kingdom. The ceremonial dagger, though not forged for combat, was sharp and glinted dangerously in the harsh light of the training room. My instincts, newly awakened by the partial shift and the raw energy flowing through my veins, took over. I didn't think about defense. I thought about protection. Protection of myself, and protection of the connection that had just saved the Lycan kingdom from an immediate death sentence. A guttural snarl, wild and deep, ripped from my throat, a sound I didn't recognize as my own. My silver-furred hands shot out. I didn't grab the dagger. I grabbed Rhys's wrist just above the bone. The razor-sharp claws I'd just grown sank slightly into his expensive jacket and the skin beneath. Rhys cried out, not just from the pain, but from the shock of being overpowered by the girl he had publicly mocked just hours ago. He was the crown prince, the heir apparent, and I was the hidden princess, a waitress, and I had him pinned. Before I could complete the instinctive move to disarm him, King Cassian erupted into action. He moved with the devastating speed of a true Lycan King, a blur of silver-eyed fury. He didn't shout. He didn't warn. He simply seized his son, wrenching Rhys away from me with a single brutal and powerful shove that sent the prince crashing into a wall 10 feet away. The dagger clattered harmlessly to the floor. "You insolent, treasonous fool." Cassian's voice was a low, terrifying growl of rage that shook the very foundations of the room. It was far more frightening than any shout. It was the sound of ultimate authority challenged and enraged. Rhys struggled to his feet, dazed, his eyes shifting from the floor to his father, then finally landing on me, the undeniable, partially shifted proof of his father's choice. "She is a mistake. A commoner who broke the pact." Rhys stammered, scrambling to justify his actions. "I was protecting the lineage," Octavia said. "You dare bring her name into this room?" Cassian advanced on his son, every step radiating lethal menace. "You attempted to murder my mate. That is an act of treason. You will be confined to the dungeons immediately." Rhys paled, his arrogance instantly evaporating, replaced by raw terror. "The dungeons? Father, no. I am your heir. You forfeited your standing the moment you raised a weapon against your future Luna," Cassian declared, his eyes blazing. He nodded to the 2 royal guards who were now standing rigid with shock and fear in the doorway. "Take the prince to the lowest level. Solitary confinement. Tell the head guard no one, especially not Octavia, is to speak to him." The guards, pale and trembling, moved quickly to obey, dragging the protesting, suddenly sobbing Rhys out of the training room. The tension only eased slightly once the door sealed shut. I slowly relaxed my stance and the silver fur and claws receded, leaving my hands slightly shaky but whole. The intense power, the overwhelming feeling of being a creature and not a woman, slowly ebbed away. Cassian turned back to me, his broad shoulders rising and falling with heavy breaths. He was a king, but he was also a father who had just ordered the imprisonment of his only son. The pain of the decision was palpable in the air. He crossed the room in 3 strides and gently took my hands in his, turning them over, inspecting the faint indentations my claws had left on Rhys's skin. "You defended yourself," he murmured, his gaze intense. "Good. You reacted with the power. But your heart is racing. Are you hurt?" I shook my head, still slightly breathless. "No. But you just imprisoned your son. The heir." Cassian's eyes hardened again, but this time the coldness was aimed inward. "He betrayed his future queen and attempted to sabotage the only plan that can save this kingdom from the Fae Curse. His actions were reckless and driven by Octavia's lies. It was necessary." He released my hands and stepped away, running a hand over the back of his neck, the picture of a man burdened beyond measure. "Octavia is bolder than I realized. She used my son to try and eliminate you before the trial of purity and power can be sanctioned. We have to speed things up." She said she was trying to save the kingdom. I pressed, needing to understand the full depth of his choices. "If I fail, you marry her and the kingdom is safe. Why risk the trial?" Cassian turned back, his gaze locking with mine, raw and honest. Because I know the terms of the Fae bargain better than anyone. I know Octavia's line is tainted. The bargain will fail anyway, just slower, because she doesn't possess the pure royal blood needed to sustain the pact long term. You, Wren, the hidden princess, you are the true pure Lycan royal line. You are the loophole, the one chance we have to annul the curse entirely. He walked toward me, his stance imposing. I claimed you because I had no choice. But now, seeing your power, seeing the ancient Lycan lineage in your eyes, I know I was right. You are the superior choice. You are the key. We just need to awaken the full shift. The confrontation with Rhys had ironically propelled my training forward. The emotional intensity had unlocked a new level of my Lycan core. General Anya returned and immediately began drilling me on how to harness the rage I felt toward Rhys and Octavia, teaching me to trigger the partial shift on command. For the next week, the training was relentless. I learned how to sharpen my senses, how to fight with claws and teeth, and how to command the raw Lycan energy that coursed through me. But the full shift remained elusive. One evening, after Cassian had watched me fail a shift drill repeatedly, he dismissed Anya and approached me. I was exhausted, sweat-soaked, and covered in faint bruises. "You're fighting it, Wren," he observed, his voice quiet. "You're afraid of losing control, of becoming the animal Rhys accused you of being." "I don't know what I am," I admitted, my voice hoarse. "I'm fighting to save a kingdom I never knew, for a king who only claimed me out of necessity. It's too much." Cassian sat down on the floor opposite me. He looked less like a king and more like a weary man. He finally lowered his guard, sharing a piece of the hero's flaw/barrier. "When I was a young Lycan, I made a mistake," he began, his silver eyes distant. "A mistake driven by arrogance and misplaced trust. It resulted in the death of my first true mate and the destruction of an entire border community. I was shattered. I realized my power was a weapon I couldn't always control. I retreated behind a mask of cold duty, convinced that my darkness made me unworthy of another pure connection." He looked at me, a flash of deep personal pain in his eyes. "When your glamour broke, the sheer power of the mate connection hit me. It was terrifying. I was afraid to touch you, afraid I would contaminate your purity with my darkness. I wanted to send you away. But the king in me knew you were the only hope." He reached out and gently took my hand. "I need you to stop seeing yourself as a pawn in this war, Wren. I need you to understand that what I felt when I claimed you was genuine. You are not a sacrifice. You are my destiny. Let go of the fear. Embrace the truth. You are powerful and I believe you will save us." His confession, the hero's misconception revealed, shattered my defensive wall. It wasn't pity I felt but a profound connection, an understanding of the immense, lonely burden he carried. Suddenly, a hidden emergency alarm, a low, piercing electronic whine, began to echo through the sublevel. Cassian was instantly on his feet, his silver eyes snapping with alert. "What is that?" Anya burst back through the door, her face grim. "Your Majesty, we have a breach. The royal guard found an unconscious guard near Prince Rhys's cell. The door is open. And the CCD shows Octavia was there." Cassian swore, a guttural sound of pure rage. "She freed him. She's using him as a pawn." "It's worse, King Cassian," Anya said, holding up a small, folded piece of parchment. "A runner just delivered this to the main gate. It's from Octavia. She's holding Rhys hostage at the ancient Lycan meeting grounds, the site of the trial. She says you have 1 hour to bring Wren to her. If you don't, she'll execute your son, claiming it was an act of mercy for the kingdom she is trying to save." The antagonist had raised the stakes to their highest point, transforming the price/high stakes from a political consequence into a direct, devastating personal choice. Cassian had to choose: save his hidden princess and doom his son, or sacrifice his mate to save his heir and satisfy the Fae bargain. The parchment crumpled in King Cassian's fist. The look on his face was one of agonizing internal conflict, the burden of the crown crushing the heart of the father. Octavia hadn't just escaped containment. She had executed a devastating strategy, using Rhys, his own son, as the ultimate leverage. "It's a trap, Your Majesty," General Anya stated immediately, her eyes narrowed. "She knows you need Wren alive for the trial. She wants to force a choice that destroys you either way. She wants to force me to choose the kingdom's stability over my mate," Cassian corrected, his voice dangerously even. "If I surrender Wren, Octavia executes her and claims I upheld the Fae bargain. I'm forced to marry her and the kingdom is safe, for a short time. If I save Wren, she executes Rhys and the Lycans lose their heir, plunging the kingdom into chaos and accelerating the curse. I stepped forward, my exhaustion forgotten, the Lycan core burning bright with adrenaline and resolve. I looked at Cassian, seeing not the cold king, but the man who had just admitted his deep personal burden. You won't choose, Cassian, I said firmly. We go to the meeting grounds. We save Rhys and I face the trial. He turned to me, his silver eyes filled with admiration, but also fierce protective denial. No. That is precisely what she wants. She will use Rhys as a distraction to eliminate you. The trial of purity and power is set to happen there. She'll twist the situation to make it a public execution instead of a trial. But she won't expect a hostage exchange, I argued, my mind working frantically. She expects you to arrive with a squadron of guards. She expects a siege. She doesn't expect me to walk in alone. Cassian gripped my shoulders, his intensity magnetic. You are the hidden princess, the final hope against the curse. You are not expendable, Wren. And Rhys is your son, the crown prince. I countered, touching the raw mark of his ancient lineage that now pulsed faintly silver on his cheek. You said yourself you regret not trusting your instincts before. Trust them now. We go and we don't play her game. We play mine. My conviction seemed to pierce his regal control. He stared at me for a long moment, the silent communication between a true alpha and his mate overriding all logic. He finally nodded, a slow, decisive movement. Anya, prepare a minimal extraction team. No more than 4 elite guards, he commanded. We approach stealthily. We will not use the helicopter. We will arrive on foot. He looked at me, his gaze softening briefly. You have 1 hour to rest. And prepare your mind, Wren. The ancient meeting grounds are powerful. They are sacred. The moment we step onto that ground, the energies of the trial will begin to recognize you. The journey to the ancient Lycan meeting grounds, deep in the Appalachian wilderness, was tense and silent. We traveled in 2 black SUVs, the king and I in the first, flanked by 4 of his best guards. As we neared the site, Cassian reached across the console and took my hand. His skin was warm and rough, a solid anchor against the swirling chaos. The sacred grounds are a natural amphitheater, bordered by 3 standing stones. It's where the most powerful Lycans in our history faced their destiny, he explained, his voice low. I need you to remember everything Anya taught you. Control the core. Harness the rage you felt when Rhys mocked you. Harness the fire you felt when I kissed you. You must maintain the partial shift if necessary. What if she tries to kill him? I whispered, my nerves stretched thin. She won't, Cassian said, his eyes hard. She needs him alive to maintain her leverage against me. But she is ruthless. She will hurt him to break my resolve. We parked a half-mile away, proceeding on foot through the dense twilight forest. The air here was different, cold, ancient, and charged with a silent, heavy power. We broke through the tree line and stepped into the clearing. The Lycan meeting grounds were breathtaking. A massive, perfectly circular meadow, surrounded by towering, centuries-old oaks. In the center were the 3 monoliths Cassian had described, their surfaces covered in carvings of Lycan ancestors. And in the very center, kneeling and bound with thick silver chains, was Rhys. He was bruised and terrified, his face smeared with dirt. Standing over him, regal and utterly venomous, was Octavia. She was flanked by several of her own hired guards, Lycan mercenaries identifiable by their scarred faces and lack of royal guard insignia. She smiled, a cold, predatory gleam in her emerald eyes as she saw us emerge. King Cassian, she called out, her voice carrying clearly in the vast clearing. How fitting. The Lycan King and his harlot mate, come to witness the salvation of their kingdom. Cassian stepped forward, leaving me slightly behind him, but his hand resting protectively on the hilt of his weapon. Release him, Octavia. Your scheme is over. Over. Octavia laughed, a high, harsh sound. She walked over and ran a sharp nail down Rhys's cheek. He flinched, biting back a cry. This is only the beginning. You chose a common witch over your birthright. You broke the Fae bargain. I am simply removing the cause of the curse. He pointed to me. I offer you one last chance, King. Reject her now. Execute her, and the Fae will see you acted in good faith. I will step in as the approved bride and the kingdom will be safe. Or I execute the true heir, and you have nothing left but a whore and a curse. Cassian's gaze was steady, cold as mountain ice. I choose my true mate. Release my son. Octavia's face tightened with cold fury. Then die alone, Lycan King. She raised a thick, ceremonial hunting knife over Rhys's head. Wait! I shouted, stepping out from behind Cassian. Octavia paused, her emerald eyes focusing on me, pure hatred radiating from her beautiful form. Ah, the hidden princess speaks. What is it, Mouse? A plea for your life. I stood tall, summoning the newfound strength in my core. I looked at the three monoliths, at the Lycan symbols, and at the terror in Rhys's eyes. No plea, I declared, my voice clear and strong. I accept the trial of purity and power. No. Here. The ancient laws state that the trial can be invoked by a royal contender at any time on these grounds, if the succession is challenged. You challenged my worthiness, Octavia. Now I will prove it. My sudden invocation of the ancient law visibly rattled Octavia. She lowered the knife slightly, her mind racing. The power of the sacred ground itself seemed to respond, sending a low thrum through the earth beneath my feet. A trial. Octavia scoffed, quickly regaining control. You can't even hold a full shift. You will fail, and when you do, the curse will accelerate and I will be the one to kill you, not the Fae. If I fail, I die. If I win, the Lycan people are saved from the curse and you lose all claim to the throne, I stated, walking toward the center, my eyes blazing gold. If you refuse my challenge, the council will view you as a traitor who obstructed the only path to salvation. You cannot refuse the trial of purity and power on sacred ground. Octavia saw the trap. She couldn't refuse the challenge without looking guilty of treason. But she also knew that if she accepted and I won, she was finished. Fine, she snarled, venom lacing every syllable. A trial it is. But the rules are clear. The trial must be conducted by the presiding Lycan King. Cassian, you will judge the trial. And if she fails, you will uphold the law and you will execute your own mate. Cassian stepped up to stand beside me, his hand resting reassuringly on my back. Agreed. Now release the prisoner. The trial requires no distractions. Octavia signaled to her guards, who quickly unlocked Rhys and shoved him toward his father. Rhys scrambled to Cassian's side, clinging to his arm, looking at me with a mixture of terror and dawning reluctant respect. As Cassian pulled his son into the safety of the perimeter, I stepped into the center of the sacred ground, facing the three monoliths. The air was thick with ancient energy, and the faint, silvery light of the awakened Lycan core began to glow around my hands. I took a deep breath, focusing on the sheer magnitude of the task. I had to achieve the full shift, a change I was told takes months of training, within the next few minutes. Let the trial begin, Octavia hissed, stepping back to watch my downfall. The air in the sacred clearing crackled with raw, untamed power. I stood alone in the center, facing the ancient monoliths, the eyes of the Lycan King, his terrified son, and the lethal Octavia all fixed on my small frame. This was the trial of purity and power, and my only path to victory was to achieve the full shift, a transformation I was utterly unprepared for. I felt the immense heavy energy of the sacred ground pressing down on me, judging my worthiness. My hands already glowed with the faint silver light of my awakened Lycan core, but it was only a flickering lamp compared to the furnace I needed to become. Octavia's voice cut through the silence, sharp with anticipation of my failure. The first task of the trial, Wren, is the test of submission. The Lycan must submit their human nature to their primal self. Shift fully, or the trial ends in forfeiture, and the king is bound by law to reject and execute you. I closed my eyes, desperately trying to trigger the violent, painful change. I summoned the memory of Rhys's mocking words, the cold threat of Octavia, and the crushing fear of the Fae Curse. I pushed the silver power in my core, but my body resisted, trembling violently, achieving only a slight growth of silver fur on my arms. A partial shift that wasn't enough. You are weak. Octavia sneered. You are a fraud. The kingdom will fall because of your pathetic impurity. Suddenly, the pressure of the moment was too great. The core energy flared into blinding pain again, just as it had during Cassian's initial intervention, threatening to consume me. I stumbled, clutching my chest. A low, commanding voice cut through my agony. Look at me, Wren. I forced my eyes open. King Cassian was standing just outside the circle of power, his silver eyes blazing with desperate urgency and a fierce protective love I hadn't seen before. He had pushed Rhys behind his back, his entire focus on me. "The shift is not about pain. It is about acceptance," he roared, his voice thick with emotion, shattering his usual cold reserve. "You are not a sacrifice. You are my mate. The true Lycan Queen. Stop fighting the fire. Embrace the wild thing inside you that answered my claim. Embrace the hidden princess you are." He was giving me permission. Permission to be powerful, to be wild, to be his. I focused on him, letting the overwhelming force of the mate bond wash over me. I remembered the fierce strength of his kiss, the shared vulnerability when he spoke of his past, and the unwavering conviction in his eyes that I was his people's only hope. My focus shifted from fear to a primal, absolute trust. I am a Lycan. I am a princess. I am the king's mate. The defiant thought was the key. The pain vanished, instantly replaced by a sudden, exhilarating surge of freedom. The silver power in my chest exploded, no longer a controlled current, but a raging, joyful river. My bones began to shift. It was agonizing, terrifying, and the most magnificent sensation of my life. My spine elongated, my jaw thrust forward, and my teeth turned into wicked, powerful fangs. Silver fur, thick and shimmering with ancient light, erupted across my entire body. My height exploded, my muscles swelled and bunched, and the raw, earthy scent of ancient Lycan royalty flooded the clearing, overpowering the smell of pine and fear. I threw back my head and let out a roar, a sound that was pure, untamed, and utterly victorious. It was the sound of my true self, the hidden princess finally unleashed. I stood there, fully shifted. No longer Wren, the waitress, but a magnificent silver Lycan, larger and more imposing than I could have ever imagined, radiating the fierce, pure power of my hidden royal lineage. Cassian gasped, a sound of reverence and utter awe. Even Octavia stumbled back, her eyes wide with shock and fear, recognizing the sheer magnitude of the power she had just unleashed against herself. The trial wasn't over. My successful full shift was merely the pivot/reveal, the passing of the test of submission. The final test. Cassian's voice was strained but strong, filled with pride. The test of purity. The Lycan must control the power. You must shift back, Wren. Control the wildness and return to your human form, untouched by the savagery of the shift. This was the hardest part. The wildness, the sheer power of the Lycan demanded to stay. I wanted to hunt, to run, to bury Octavia beneath the soil. But I remembered the fear in Rhys's eyes. I remembered the trust in Cassian's control. I focused on my humanity, on the waitress who knew how to be careful and quiet. I focused on the woman who loved the king. Slowly, painfully, the magnificent form began to recede. The silver fur melted back into my skin, the claws shortened, the size diminished. Finally, I stood before them, naked, trembling, exhausted but fully human. The silver light was gone, replaced by the soft glow of the full moon above, and I was whole. Untouched by savagery. I had passed the trial. Cassian didn't wait. He crossed the sacred ground in a blur, his jacket already off. He wrapped the heavy garment around me, pulling me tight against his warm, strong chest. "You won, my queen," he whispered fiercely against my hair. "You won." Octavia stood paralyzed for a moment, then she erupted. "A lie. It was a trick. She's still a commoner. You cannot let her stand." Cassian released me, his arms still firmly around my shoulders. He stepped forward, his eyes fixed on his cousin. The cold king was back, but now he had a queen, and the truth behind him. "The trial is complete," Cassian announced, his voice booming with the final authority of his title, amplified by the power of the sacred ground. "The Lycan Council and the ancestors of this kingdom will be informed that Wren of the ancient Lycan royal line has successfully passed the trial of purity and power. This officially nullifies the Fae bargain that was bound to Octavia's bloodline, preventing the curse." He looked at Octavia, his expression ruthless. "By kidnapping the crown prince and attempting to murder my mate on sacred ground, you committed acts of treason. The price is execution/banishment." Octavia's mask of power finally shattered. She screamed, turning to flee, but General Anya and the elite guards moved in a flash, surrounding her and her mercenaries. Cassian turned back to me, his silver eyes filled with a pride that finally eclipsed the burden of his crown. Rhys, standing a safe distance away, watched us, his terror slowly morphing into a begrudging respect. "You saved us, my queen," Cassian murmured, lifting my chin and looking into my gold eyes. "Now the world will know the truth of the Lycan King's Luna." 3 months later, I stood on the main balcony of the royal Lycan palace, overlooking the sprawling city. It was the night of the second full moon since the trial. I wore a gown of rich, shimmering fabric, and the silver mark on my cheek, once a hidden shame, was now a badge of honor and royalty. I was Wren, queen of the Lycan kingdom. Rhys was no longer imprisoned, but he was no longer arrogant. He had faced his own near death, and it had stripped away his entitlement. He now trained tirelessly under General Anya, still the heir but humbled. He sent me small, carefully worded notes, acknowledging my strength, never mentioning the diner. Octavia was banished to the desolate eastern borders, alive but stripped of all power and standing. I felt a massive familiar set of arms wrap around my waist. Cassian pulled me back against his powerful chest, resting his chin on my shoulder. He was no longer the cold, distant king. The threat of the Fae bargain was gone, and the love for his true mate had finally dissolved the hero's flaw/misconception. "The kingdom is stable, my Luna," he whispered, his voice deep and content. "The Fae have withdrawn their claim. You saved us all." I smiled, leaning back into his embrace. "I was just a clumsy waitress, Cassian. I was the one you thought unworthy." "You were the hidden princess I was unworthy of," he corrected, turning me in his arms. He looked at me, his eyes full of tenderness. "My only regret is that I didn't find you sooner." He lowered his head and kissed me, a slow, tender promise of forever. Thank you for joining Wren on her incredible, tense journey from a humble waitress to the Lycan Queen. Comment below with the part of the story that you found most intriguing. Were you shocked when Cassian claimed Wren despite the Fae bargain? Did you believe Wren had the strength to survive the trial and achieve the full shift? What do you think Rhys's journey will be like now that he's been humbled by Wren's power? Your subscription is a huge support to my young channel and means the world to me as I try to grow. Please like and subscribe so you don't miss the next interesting story.